The grid is a system of wires, transformers, and generation technologies that deliver power from the source of generation, so where the power is created, to our homes, our businesses, our communities. There's a vast amount of technology and wires, but effectively it's maintained all by our electric utilities, our electric distribution utilities. The grid is a system that has been set up over hundreds of years and typically revolves around centralized power generation. So our grid in Ohio typically relies on a few big sources of generation. So coal plants, natural gas plants, big operations, usually along a river or along a body of water in the state, and then our grid carries that electricity to our communities. Now, in Ohio, as we move towards more clean energy, we're looking at a more distributed grid, so having wind, solar, and battery power spread out all across Ohio, not just in a few centralized locations. That means our grid is more reliable because if one power source goes out, let's say a coal plant isn't operating or a natural gas plant is having issues with its supply, we have distributed generation to pull from. We have wind, solar, and batteries from all over the state to feed into our energy system. Now is a perfect time for communities to invest in clean energy and a more efficient grid. Number one, federal incentives are available. There have never been more incentives, grants, and funding opportunities for communities, for residents, and for businesses to invest in and build out our infrastructure and our clean energy across the state. So it's because of that, it's also just generally becoming more affordable and more cost-effective to purchase clean energy, to upgrade our grid, and to upgrade our infrastructure. So right now is sort of the key time to invest in these technologies, and as a result, we're going to see more reliable power for our communities, which is really, really important because we're also in a time of transition. We're moving away from a reliance on coal, a reliance on natural gas, and our infrastructure needs to be upgraded to better handle distributed generation across our communities. But when we upgrade our grid and when we make our grid more reliable, that means our utilities, our electric distribution, private utilities, no longer have to spend as much money upgrading our aging infrastructure and no longer have to build things like new power plants or new transmission lines. So at the end of the day, you're creating a more reliable system, but also you're creating a more affordable energy system for your residents and your community because they no longer have to pay for as many grid upgrades. There's also a lot of great resources available for communities. The state government, the federal government have a number of incentives and programs that are available through the Inflation Reduction Act and other federal programs, but also Power a Clean Future Ohio is a great resource for communities to explore distributed generation and upgrading our grid infrastructure.
So how do we transition Ohio's grid mix? Number one, we make sure that our local governments are setting goals that are in alignment with our climate goals. This means transitioning away from fossil fuel generation into clean, renewable energy sources. It also means weighing in with our state elected officials and leaders to ensure that the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio is making sure that our utilities are investing in renewable energy. Fortunately, Ohio is now one of the fastest growing states for solar generation. We are quickly installing more and more solar generation across Ohio, but there is so much more we can do.
If a community has a goal to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, community choice electric aggregation can be a really powerful tool to meet that goal. Because community choice aggregation allows local governments and their citizens to determine the source of their electricity, where their power is coming from, they can embed into a contract, into a program, that their power should come from renewable sources like solar and wind. And to take it even a step further, local governments in Ohio could blend that renewable source with local generation and the Ohio workforce. So it can be an economic development tool for the state of Ohio and for local economic development regions across the state. And it can also be a way to secure renewable power sources for electricity.